Hi, for libertyandeconomics.com. I'm Nick Sorrentino. So Ron Paul won the CPAC presidential straw poll. More people voted for him by a wide margin at CPAC than any other candidate. He won 31% of the vote, and the next closest um, candidate was Mitt Romney with 22%. Sarah Palin came in third at 7%. And a lot of people, a lot of establishment Republicans are kind of dumbfounded by this. I mean, how could this be? Well, I mean, Ron Paul has a lot of support among young people, and CPAC is skews very young. It's always full of college Republicans and you know that those sorts of folks. So that has part of it, and his folks did go out and search and find the booths to vote at, which Fox News was very clear at, very clear to explain. It was, it wasn't like everybody voted in this thing. It was the people who went out of their way to vote. Kind of similar to, what happens in a representative republic like the one we have. Um, those who vote speak. Those who do not speak. Anyway, um, I mean, I honestly wasn't really that surprised. Uh, I was surprised by the margin, but I figured he'd be one or two just by virtue of the fact that there were, Young Americans for Liberty there. And if you watch CPAC, I mean, you could see it. But anyway, but I really wanted to speak about why it is that some people just despise this man. That, in my opinion, is probably the most honest politician that I've ever met. And I actually did have the pleasure of meeting him once. He I mean, he speaks his mind. There's no spin. His analysis is steady. It's very transparent. You can understand his arguments. Um, and there's no weird, you know, sort of pandering to a certain constituency. And I mean, the guy's honest. And that's a rare thing, ever. And then I probably, especially now, and especially on Capitol Hill. Yet people dislike him very, very much. I mean, Republicans probably, a lot of Republicans probably dislike him more than Democrats, even though he's really the most Republican of the Republicans. Um, and there are a couple of points that I think really put people off about him. First off, he looks like a nerd. He sounds like a nerd, and he talks like a nerd. Um, and a lot of people just don't like nerds. That's it. If Ron Paul looked like Mitt Romney, uh, you know, I'd say easy, another 10% of the Republican electorate would like him. They I've talked with people and they just don't like the way he looks. They don't like the way he comes across. He's a little guy. His voice is high, and these are stylistic things, but they count in politics. I mean, the funny thing with him, he focuses on ideas as opposed to the style. A lot of people just can't get over that. Now, the other thing that's even bigger than um, those stylistic things is Ron Paul's position um, on foreign policy. Um, a lot of people just have a fundamental disagreement with him on the role of the U.S. military. Now, interestingly, Ron Paul is a military veteran. He was a flight surgeon in the Air Force. Um, and a lot of the people who make the case for ongoing warfare were never served in the military. And he basically makes the case that any war that we have should be one that is declared by Congress. It's essentially the way the people can give their blessing um, on a war. But we have essentially allowed the executive branch to just wage war whenever it wants. And he has a problem with that. But a lot of Republicans do not have a problem with that. In fact, they are all for it. And a good number of Republicans feel like it is entirely proper for the military to be um, as active as it has been in light of September 11th, etc. Um, and Ron Paul talks about things like the military-industrial complex, and boy, that sounds very hippie-like to a lot of people, and they don't like that. But interestingly, the term was coined by Eisenhower in his last speech, and I would encourage anybody who has not seen this speech to look it up on YouTube. It's easily found. But in his last speech to the American public, now remember, four-star general, then president, in his last speech to the American public, warns of the expansion of the military industrial complex. Now, this is a man who obviously loves the military, built a career in the military, commanded the military, and he's warning the American public as he's going out of office of the military industrial complex. He's warning about a system. He's not talking about the people in the military or even in the complex. He just recognized that once you get a system going, like the military industrial complex, it's not going to limit itself. It's going to grow and grow and grow unless people pay very close attention and curtail it. Because everybody likes jobs, and defense jobs pay well, and they're very secure. And so they just, over time, it compounds itself, compounds itself, compounds itself. And Eisenhower recognized that this was probably not good for the Republic, and Ron Paul agrees. But a lot of people don't want to hear that. A lot of people think that if one makes the case for reining in our military overseas, that is somehow unpatriotic. Um, I don't see how perpetual war and people, you know, and the casualties that come with this perpetual war. That's what people need to remember is how many young men and women nowadays um, are crippled from this war. I mean, literally, but also psychologically. How many lives are destroyed? Now, war is a necessary thing. It happens. Um, and there are times when war is entirely appropriate. Um, but I was talking to a guy at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, not the one in Washington, but the one near Dulles Airport, which is fantastic. I would encourage anybody to go there and check it out. You can see military-industrial complex in all its glory there. But I mean, truly, it's fascinating and amazing, amazing planes, um, helicopters, and even space shuttles there, and a Concorde. But anyway, I was talking to a guy, and he was talking about he had been in the army, and he said, "Man, when I was in, there wasn't any war, thank God." It's like these guys are going over to Afghanistan. They're doing 3 or 4, 5 tours now over there, and the impact that that has on someone's family and on someone's psyche. I mean, human beings are not meant to be engaged in warfare for that kind of period of time. It I'd be willing to bet, I'm no psychologist, but I'd be willing to bet that it probably does bad things to one's brain. Um, you know, and that's what I think about when we talk about expanding wars around the world. As I think about those soldiers, and I want to support them, and I support our military. Um, but Ron Paul makes the case that these wars are very expensive, both in financial terms, and that's what he focuses on primarily, but also I would say in human terms. I mean, it's war is hell, as they say, and those of us who get up and drive off to our office jobs every day, and pay attention to the war to the extent that we read about it, on Drudge Report or whatever, need to keep that in mind. There's a real cost. Anyway, until next time.